Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. This is the Breaking Free Show, and I am Marilyn Shannon, and it is February, and I am feeling good. I hope all of you are doing well today and looking forward to our show because we always have something interesting going on here. Anyway, before we get on with our show, I want to say hi to Amnon. Hey,
Hello, Marilyn.
how are
How are
you?
you?
You sound so formal today. Are you really formal?
Hello, Miss Marilyn. Hello, Miss Shannon. Now it's formal.
Now it's formal. You doing all right?
I like your haircut.
Thank you. Yeah, it's raining out, so it's even gotten better. You doing good?
Doing fine, thanks.
Good. So we have a wonderful show, but before we get started, I want to remind you always you can call in anytime you want. If you have a landline, you want to call in 919 or a cell phone, doesn't matter, 919-518-9773, or you can come in on Skype voice. That is not video. Don't be scared. It is voice at computers. That's plural. The number 2K voice. And you can come in to our chat anytime you like. Just put your name, nickname next to the video, and you can comment, ask questions, share, whatever you like in there as well. So I came up with this great line today for this show, Surf's Up. And we have a very exciting guest in store for you, all the way from Costa Rica. We have Maia Dery coming in, Dery, and she is a surfer, she is a coach, and a storyteller. So, hey, Maya, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing fabulous. So you're in Costa Rica.
I am in Costa Rica in a little jungle village called Nosara, where the power happens to be out at the moment. But luckily the Wi-Fi has an emergency backup, so I'm still able to talk to you.
Cool. So we're great. So in the jungle.
Yes.
And why are you there?
I am here because the surf is very good here, and it's a good bit warmer than the water in North Carolina, where I'm from right now. And it's just a really wonderful community. The Costa Ricans in general, and this place is certainly no exception, are such welcoming, warm people. They have a concept, a way of life, a greeting here, Pura Vida, which means pure life. Essentially, let's be together, love one another, love our lives right now. And it really is a special place to be.
So there's people of all ages that are from there, right? Costa Ricans, all ages, kids, teenagers, adults. How many people are there?
Oh my goodness.
What's the population?
It's very small. I think the year-round population of this county area where I'm from is maybe around 6,000. And there are about 55,000 visitors a year. So it's the economy is absolutely tourist driven here. And most of the tourists are here either for surf or to do yoga. There's several really world-class yoga centers here as well.
Wow. Sounds like a place I'd like to visit.
It's wonderful.
It sounds beautiful. So surfing.
Surfing, yes.
Surfing is your thing. And what I loved about reading your bio is about what the ocean can teach us. And that just gave me the chills.
It gives me the chills all the time.
That's a good thing, right? When you're doing something that you can passionately, continuously love.
Yes, absolutely. I started very late in life with surfing, technically, as we think about it, but I've loved water since I was a child and wanted to surf since I was a child. My grandparents retired from Chapel Hill to San Diego when I was, I think, 6. And I started going to spend summers with them and when I wasn't in school. And I saw surfers at that point, just men and boys in the water. And I really wanted to do that. But my grandparents were old and a little infirm, and they didn't want to let me in the ocean. And I never saw surfers in North Carolina. It never occurred to me that I could do it here. And I just thought, well, someday I'm going to learn how to do that. And I got distracted by adolescence and a whole lot of some days, and was facing my 40th birthday, and just there was this upwelling of this feeling that it's absolutely time for you to learn how to surf. And so I sent myself off to Santa Cruz, California, which is there's a cove there called Cowell's Cove. It's one of the easiest places in the continental US to learn how to surf because you can paddle back out in deep, flat water. And I thought I would just go to surf camp for a week and that would be it. I would check that off the bucket list, but it didn't work out that way. It really turned out at that point, I was a college professor, and it turned out to be a week where I learned more intensively and more joyfully than I had learned in memory. And I knew by the end of that week that my life was going to have to change, and it did, and it continues to.
So, okay, so there's two things I want to ask you. So first of all, getting up on on the board,
Yes.
what was that like? I mean, how do you just do that at when you've never done it before?
You don't. I mean, there are a few people who are athletically gifted who might do that, but I think we surf 6 hours a day, 6 days a week, and I stood up twice that first week.
Wow.
So, I mean, it's hard, and the you know there's a saying, and a surfer from an earlier era said, "The best surfer in the water is the one having the most fun." And I think that's absolutely true. I knew when I learned how to do this that I was never going to be good. I've never been that good at anything athletic in my life, and I was very old to start something that demanding. So surfing became right away about more than just standing up on a board. For me, it became about learning about new ways to look at the world that dissolved a lot of artificial barriers that I had let exist in my life for a long time. And water is a pretty good solvent. It will help you dissolve things.
Well, I want to hear about that. I want to go into the details with you because first of all, I love what you said about repeat that line again about most fun.
The best surfer in the water is the one having the most fun.
Because I mean that's a line that we can use with anything. The best
Absolutely.
writer is the one that's having the most fun. The best speaker is the one having the most fun. I mean, that's what it's all about, right?
Yeah, so well, that in a way, I mean, I wouldn't use the word fun. I would use the word play, but it's really
Mhm.
central to my work life and my vocational life. Is that a sense of playfulness, of unexpected juxtapositions and creativity is crucial to us, no matter what we're doing. And yeah, I think one of the reasons I felt so hard, head over heels in love with surfing, is that those lessons are imminently transferable.
Yeah, absolutely. And play uh I mean, helps us be creative. And so that just opens up the whole world from there. So tell us some of
Exactly.
the things that you recall, some of the beginning lessons you learned from the water.
Oh my goodness. Well, I've been staring at water since I was a kid. That my grandmother, the same one in San Diego, she bought me my first camera. She tried. She was a painter, very accomplished painter, and she tried to teach me to paint. And I was never that good at being still. And painting requires a certain amount of physical stillness. And so she thought, oh well, maybe this kid needs a camera. So she bought me this little Kodak Instamatic and asked me what I wanted to take pictures of. And I immediately said the water, and went down to the beach. My grandfather took me to the beach that first afternoon, and I shot the whole roll of all these little things that, as the sun went down. And I think, and I became a photographer, I think, in large part not because I was driven to make photographs as objects, but because I was driven to show people how amazing life in the world can be. And water really was one of the most, and still is one of the most amazing things that I know of. I mean, it's pretty mystical stuff. It's there are very few entities that can be a solid, a liquid, and a gas and still be themselves. We are mostly water. And so it's not as though it's this other thing that has nothing to do with us. We don't think about it, but if we did, it's absolutely the source of life, of all biological life on the planet, and we're interacting with it every day. We have to survive, and in that way, it's not just a source of life, but it's a potential source of gratitude, and mindfulness, and greater stewardship, and all of the things that it seems like we could use a little bit more of.
I love the water. I'm an Aquarian and I love the water. And my body, if I don't go into the water at least once a week, I have to go in at least once a week. If I don't go, I do yoga and I take a dance class. I do all different kinds of exercise. But if I don't go in the water, my body's going to hurt.
Yeah,
I
I think
need the
there are a lot of
water.
people like you.
Yeah, I need the water. I know it. My body knows it. It knows the water. I could be hurting. I had juvenile arthritis as a child, so I believe without a question I can be in pain and I go in the water and the resistance and the floating and the swimming, I can come out and it's like puff goes away.
Yes, it really is transformative getting in the water. And then there's a long history of people, coming up with great ideas in the bathtub. And it
Absolutely.
doesn't have to be a beach in Costa Rica.
Right.
Water in and of itself is a really kind of abundant medium.
Yeah, no question. I've had the best ideas when the water is just on top of my head in the shower. And, sometimes I go in there because I need that idea, you know, and
Absolutely.
it just, plops on my head. And I am like, wow, this is cool. This is
Yes.
so I want, I want you just to talk. I love
Okay.
what
What
you're
would you like me
saying.
to talk
I
about?
want you to talk about the spiritual aspects. I want you to talk about the mystical, the environmental. I want you to take us through all of it.
Okay. All right. Well, I think, we in our culture, we have, understandably, we come from people who have classified things. I mean, that's what we do in Western culture post Enlightenment, is that we catalog and we classify things and we divide them from one another into ever smaller categories. And the one of the beautiful things about water, which some people might call a spiritual aspect, it doesn't have to be. It can be just a chemical aspect. Is that you can divide it, but you give it a chance, and it won't stay divided. It runs together and mixes all back together, and water really does that for us. I think if we think about it and play in it, it really can do that for us in a lot of ways. I mean, you and I are mostly water. We're not quite as mostly water as somebody who is younger, maybe 20 or 10, because we dry out as we get older. But the water that is mostly me, I think of myself, I experience myself as this autonomous being. But the water that is mostly me was mostly some other being or in some other place constituting a body of water before it was me. And in that way, water really, I think, prompts us to rethink our ideas about individuality and ownership. I mean, we think that if I own anything, I own this body. But it turns out that this body is mostly made up of stuff that other people just, in quotes, owned. And if they didn't take care of it, then I'm automatically taken less well care of, if that makes sense. So in Wilmington, the water that we drink goes through 11 municipal treatment plants before it gets to us. That watershed, the Cape Fear River Basin for Wilmington and Chapel Hill and parts of Durham, Greensboro, that we don't think of that as a place, but it's a lot more of a place in my mind because it's defined by water, this thing which is equally relevant to all of us on the planet. Um, to my mind, it's more of a place than those cities that I just listed, where, the lines that divide Wilmington from not Wilmington are just lines that somebody decided to draw on a map for who knows what reasons.
Right.
Usually not disinterested reasons when those lines go down. So I love the way that water is, it both connects us and allows us to make necessary divisions. I can't worry about all 7 billion people on the planet. I can barely get my own stuff together. But if I think of my place as my watershed, my river basin, it makes a lot more sense to me. And it doesn't just make sense intellectually, but it makes sense in that I can sense that. I get it. And that the way of thinking absolutely came from playing in the water, which for me takes the form of riding waves on a board. But it doesn't have to take that form. I think any form of water-based play can be really enhancing and abundant, really giving in a lot of ways.
And the other thing I think that is so interesting about playing in the water, anybody can do it.
Anybody can do it.
I mean, sometimes, when I swim, I have paddles on my feet, I have paddles on my hands, I have a snorkel. I mean, I have different toys, but whatever I do in the water, there's always something to do without something.
Yes.
There's always a way to play without anything. Just
Always,
me and the
always.
water.
Yes. And, one of the things that we know or that we're coming to understand, we think that the research is still early on humans, but we know this about rats, for example, that, our brain development is really dependent on play. We don't quite, if my understanding is right, we don't quite have the genetic instructions to tell our brains exactly how to form. They tend to form with use. And the use that our brains get through play is particularly growth enhancing. And, as we age, we don't feel as compelled to play. The theory goes in part because our brains aren't developing as fast. But if we want our brains to continue to develop, we will find ways to continue to play. And it's just that simple. And water, I think, some people are scared of the water, and not everyone has had equal access to opportunities to learn how to swim. And unfortunately, in our culture, those opportunities tend to fall on racial and income lines. And that's something that a lot of people are working very hard to address. That the ability to swim and the ability to access water in which one can play, I think is really a fundamental human right, because it is so important in ways that if you don't access it on a regular basis, you don't understand what it can do for your health and well-being.
And you really, honestly, you don't need to swim. You can just walk.
No,
And
absolutely.
just sometimes, if I just want to walk in the water, the hardest thing, and the with the most amount of resistance, is walking low. It's not
Yes.
walking with a lot of water. It's walking when it's shallow. And and the other thing is, since it's ageless, it's a wonderful place for families to be. Me and my
Absolutely.
grandchildren, I'll tell you, there is nothing we can't do in the water together.
Yes,
You know?
yes, it's so fun.
It
And
is so
you
fun.
know, yeah, I do think it's interesting to think about our history in the South. The segregationists were particularly violent when it came to swimming access, and there was a they called it a wade-in in Biloxi, and it was one of the most violent confrontations of the civil rights movement. When a group of African Americans decided to stage a protest by wading into this all-white beach. I think that the segregationists knew in their gut what a lot of us who love the water know, which is that if you put people, especially kids, together in the water, they're going to fall in love with each other. I mean, it's just it's a medium that promotes intimacy and friendship and playfulness and mutual understanding.
Right. It really, I mean, and you really do learn some lessons in there. You have to
You
play fair.
absolutely
You
do.
have to play fair.
You have to play fair.
You
Yes,
you have
yes,
to
play
play
does
fair
that
in the
for
water.
us.
Yeah, you have to play fair in the water. Well,
Yes, yes, absolutely.
well, this is great because I do love the water. So it's wonderful to
Good,
have somebody play with me on my show who loves the water too.
excellent.
So you are you currently a professor? Are you
I am not.
okay?
I left that job in the spring after 17 years. It was a really good long run. The way that I've come to describe is that it was as though I had this album that I loved playing for so long, and then it got to be time to play a little bit of a different album. And I think as I've gotten older, I've gotten more interested in working with a slightly older population whose list of concerns is a little bit different. I mean, it's not fundamentally different, but it's a little bit different. And so I started coaching, and this last year decided I think it's time to pursue this full time.
Oh, I want to ask you about that. And what were you a professor? What were you doing as a
I
professor?
started out teaching photography in the art department at Guilford College in
In
Greensboro,
Greensboro.
wonderful place, and then about 7 years ago, started an interdisciplinary watershed-based program called the Cape Fear River Basin Studies Program. And the Guilford College is near the headwaters of the Cape Fear River Basin, and I figured out that you could get students' attention by taking them surfing and canoeing, and doing these really immersive, literally and figuratively challenging activities, and then introducing them to grown-ups who had really cool, rigorous jobs having to do with the water. They would get interested in studying in a way that they didn't if all they heard from were a bunch of college professors.
Studying what? What were you?
They studied everything. Kids in the program studied everything. It was interdisciplinary. So they came to it from econ and physics and art and literature. And that's the great thing, is that since all humans must drink water, must be somehow connected to water, there is no discipline that isn't somehow connected to water. And so the students were one of the requirements if they continued in the program, which they could potentially continue for 4 years. One of the requirements was that they figure out a way to use the tool of their discipline, whatever that discipline was, to somehow serve the place as defined by shared water. So they had to figure out how to make it useful.
So give me an example of what a student would be doing. with the water
Absolutely.
and
So
afterwards?
sure, there was. I encouraged a lot of collaboration. So one really exciting project was this. Guilford has a community and justice studies major that is essentially looks at social justice and injustice, and what causes social injustice and how people have effectively addressed it. So we had a fellow who was majoring in that, and another fellow who was majoring in economics, and he had a film minor. And the two of them collaborated over the course of a couple of years to do a documentary about a group of people in Duplin County, North Carolina, who have been organizing for a long time, more and less successfully at different times, against the confined animal feeding operations' impact on their health and well-being and property values. And so they worked, documentary filmmaking is extremely time consuming. And this was one class among many. So it took them about 2.5 years, but they did this wonderful 30-minute documentary. And actually just about 1.5 years ago, they decided, now as grown men out in the world, that they were going to go back and make a longer documentary about a follow-up about that community. And so, it was interactions like that with people who are using the tools of the academy in real time to make their lives better, that I think enlivened the student studies in really good ways. And the other important aspect of this, I think, is, in my experience, and we do have some research that indicates that we learn in part through metaphors, and metaphors that have a lot to do with our bodies. And there isn't there isn't an 18-year-old that doesn't get the upstream downstream metaphor, that what you put in upstream affects downstream, literally, especially if we go downstream to a sewage treatment plant and take a deep whiff. And you can start talking to them about college being the upstream of their own lives, and what they put in is going to have an impact downstream, and that often got their attention. Not always, but often.
We several years ago, I don't know, I might remember, I interviewed a woman who started a rowing um, school,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it was predominantly girls.
Mm.
And it was very interesting because part of what they were learning was leadership and
That makes
patience and
perfect
how to
sense.
work together. And it was all because of
Yes.
the rowing and being in the water.
Absolutely. And communication, and, in situations like that, and surfing, I mean, maybe even more so. One of the reasons I love it so much is that you get immediate feedback for poor decision making.
Give me an example.
Well, one of the prime directives as a surfer when you're teaching somebody new is, you say, don't put the board between you and the wave. If you're going out, don't let that board get between you and an oncoming wave, because it's a big hard thing, and that wave has a lot more force than you do. If you forget that and get run over by that surfboard, it's not going to take 2 times. It's going to take 1 time, and you've got it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then also, I fall all the time. I mean, that's one of the beautiful things about this sport, is that I wouldn't dare take up skiing or snowboarding at this point, because I don't want to be falling on anything hard. I'm too old. But I can fall off that board 50,000 times, and it's fine. I'm falling into water. And if I make a mistake, I fall off, and I get to try it again. If I fail to read the wave, I don't catch it. If I am not patient, I'll wear myself out before the good part happens. There's no end of bad decisions that you can make out there and learn from.
So,
But the consequences are not terrible.
so those lessons, whether it's patience, whether it's listening to the right moment of when to do something, whatever
Yes.
that particular lesson is about falling, you take that
Yes.
into your life. Are
Oh,
you
absolutely.
so are
Yeah.
you are you a are you a better listener now? Are you a better faller? In other words, are you more apt to be spontaneous and not always concerned about the outcome and how it's going to be because you're willing to take a chance?
I think all of those are true. I think for me, I mean, we all have sort of our natural chemical constitutions in our brains, and I tend towards being a pretty fearful person, and surfing can be scary if you are prone to fear. And I think one of the things that it's really helped me do is feel the fear and do it anyway. I
Mhm.
mean, it's just, you're going to be, it's an ocean. It doesn't care about you. And something could happen to you, and it's not coming to your assistance. So, dealing with that, and understanding that I can take care of myself. And just because I feel some fear doesn't mean that there's actually anything dangerous or, threatening. Has been, I think, for me, the most valuable lesson. But one of the reasons I started doing retreats where people who've never surfed before learn to surf, or just play in the waves if they don't feel like it. And then we talk about what comes up, because in my experience, that is absolutely an aspect of learning to surf, is that whatever your issue is, if you struggle with too much hubris, you will learn humility. If you struggle with fear, you will learn courage. If you struggle with impatience, you will learn patience. If you're prone to distraction, you'll learn presence.
Right.
So it really, the ocean can show up and be the teacher you need in that moment, like no human I've ever met.
And I want to ask you about your retreats and more about your coaching. But one of the interesting things I just heard was you've got to surrender. So the water will hold you up, it will carry you, but it is far bigger and more powerful. So you are just a speck when it comes to things in the water. But you have to surrender.
You have to surrender, but not completely. I
Not
mean,
completely.
there's surrender with agency, and it's really, I mean, it is a collaboration with a literal higher power. I mean,
Mhm.
you are learning to dance, to play, to collaborate with this entity which is inherently changing and unpredictable and powerful. And to learn to do that with verve and gusto, and and a little bit of chutzpah
Yeah, right,
is
right, right.
really wonderful.
Right. Years and years and years ago, I went whitewater rafting. I went twice, but the first time I went was like a class 5, I think, which was really hard. And they
Wow.
tell
Yes.
you, and it was my first time, and they tell you that if you fall in, just go with the flow of the water. Of course, I
Yes.
remembered nothing when I fell in.
Of
Nothing. And
course.
that and I just and I'm very lucky because
Mm.
we were on an embankment. The We went on an embankment. That's when I fell out. And I was very lucky. And water's powerful.
Yes, absolutely.
So
Yes.
so I didn't go with the flow, but I think it took care of me also.
Yeah.
It carried
Lucky,
me
in fact.
yes.
Yeah.
And then the
Yes.
second time I went, my daughters were young, and we did not go in a class 5. We went, it was like 3 or 2 or whatever, and they fell out
Smart.
immediately in the water
Yeah.
that was calm, and I froze. And I remember the guide at the beginning said to me, "Marilyn, you've got to unfreeze because your
Mm.
daughters are floating in the water."
Yes.
You know? Just an amazing thing. So where have you first of all, I wanna ask you, how old are you now?
I am 52 for another week.
Oh, so you're a
My
February
birthday's
bir
yep, 1 week.
so my birthday was last week.
Happy birthday.
Thank you, and happy birthday to you. So you're an
Thank you.
Aquarian too, right?
Yes, yes.
Uh-huh, I thought that had something to do with it. I was gonna ask you, I mean, or something like that.
Yes.
Where have you surfed,
Oh my goodness.
that has been the most exciting, the most lesson, the most of
I
something?
I mean, the last surf is always the best. Whatever the last one was, it's always the most exciting. I surf a lot at Brightsville Beach. That's my home break, and I love it there. Our waves tend to be very small most of the year. And I surf a longboard is my preferred board.
Which
And
means what? What does that mean? A
well, what
longboard?
that means is that you can catch waves that almost aren't waves. They're so tiny.
Oh, that would be
And
that's my kind of board.
yes, yes. Yeah, and it's just so fun. And I surfed in Ireland, and I surfed in Maine in January, and California and Oregon, and now Costa Rica. And every place has its own. It's all places have their own integrity and their own lessons, and really their own magic. And I mean, honestly, I prefer to not freeze to death. And the older I get, the less I like really cold water.
Right.
But other than that, my favorite break is the one that I have access to. When can I get surf? Now, okay, this is my favorite break. I'm ready. So right now it's here in Nosara. When I get back in April, it'll be Wrightsville Beach again.
Right. So do you remember what you've learned in different places? In other words, when you were in Ireland, was there something specific that you can look at Ireland and say,
Goodness.
I got that in Ireland?
Yes. Well, I'm pretty social, and so I prefer to surf with other people. And one of the really miraculous things about surfing is that, unlike tennis or basketball or football or so many sports, I can surf with somebody who's really good, and we're both engaged. They can push themselves, and I can push myself, and they might take off on waves I would choose not to take off on, and everybody's still happy. I've really learned a lot about differences in cultures by looking at the similarities and differences in surf culture. There are some things that we all share, and then there are some things that are different. And Ireland, there was this one fellow, whenever I go to a brand new place, I usually hire a surf instructor to guide me for at least one session, just so I can figure out, where are the rocks, where do the locals not want visitor surfing, just, out of respect, to learn something about the locale. And I hired this guy named Ben Bennett, who has a school, Ben Surf, I believe it's called Ben Surf Clinic in Lahinch, Ireland. And he's just a wonderful person. And most of the surfers don't just surf together. They have a really vibrant musical culture. And so they go, a lot of nights. It seemed like all of them, but I'm sure it wasn't all of them. They're in some pub listening to music, drinking a pint together, instead of in their separate little boxes watching Netflix. And that was the lesson that I got from that, is that really profound togetherness that you can have from surfing can be carried over into other aspects of your life, if you build those mechanisms. So that was really wonderful.
Well, and listening to how you just described it, I can understand why the location you're in now, why yoga is kind of goes hand in hand with the philosophy of a surfer being in that same location, because it doesn't matter who you do yoga with. It's your own
Right.
practice. Doesn't matter
Exactly.
who's next to you on the mat.
Yes, it's true. And there are certainly places and days where I wouldn't get in the water. I mean, that happens with some frequency here, not so often at home. It's just some friends of mine went up the beach or up the way to a place called Marbella, which is a break that I really have no business being on. It's fast and steep, and for people who ride very small boards very well. And so, there certainly are limits, but in a lot of places that's absolutely true. And I think growing up, I can remember, especially boys, having that way to interact with people from diverse backgrounds. They all had ACC sports. Everybody from anywhere bonded over their favorite basketball, football, whatever team. And I could never bring myself to care much about all of that, even growing up in Durham. But I feel like I have an understanding of the power of that kind of bonding now with surfing, and it's just wonderful. There are people who don't speak English, and my Spanish is terrible, and we can barely communicate, but we can talk about the good waves we just rode without many words.
Yeah, I hear you. And I love what you just said, which I want to reiterate for everybody out here. You said that you won't go on certain first of all, you'll get sort of a lesson or a little tour guide when you go to some places, so you don't know it all.
Yes.
You don't have to be on the smallest board. You can do what fits right for you and
Oh,
enjoy it.
absolutely.
And it's okay to do it and not be crazy, and to do it based on your capability, your age, and not to shy away from something because of something,
Yeah, no, oh, absolutely.
right?
I mean, I think that's, one of the problems. I have run into this a lot, and it's so unfortunate, is that because we live in a media driven culture and the media wants everything to be exciting and preferably dangerous, if not sexual, if not both. I mean, that's their
Right.
favorite thing. But, it's when we think of surfing, we think of modern surfing, which is dominated by white male extreme athletes. And surfing traditionally it was done in West Africa before we did it, meaning European people of European descent and Americans, and it was done in Hawaii before Americans did it. And in Hawaii, where there was a really sophisticated culture, everybody surfed. Grandma surfed, little baby surfed, everybody surfed. It looks very different if you're a 75-year-old surfing. 74-year-old, my oldest retreat participant has been it was 74. It looks different if you're a 74-year-old than it does if you're a 24-year-old, of course. But the best surfer in the water is the one having the most fun.
Exactly.
And when you're learning, you just stay on little waves with a big board, and even in water you can stand up in, and you don't go out until you're comfortable, and that's it.
Yeah, and you don't ever have to go out, and you never
You
have
never
to
have
go
to
into
go
a
out.
bigger, as long as you're having fun. That's. So I want you to talk about your retreats and your coaching, but I also want to remind everybody, please feel free to call in. You got a question? Are you eager to know something about surfing? Are you a closet surfer? I mean, there's all kinds of things. Give us a call, 919-518-9773, or you can come in on Skype voice at computers 2K voice. That's computers, that's plural, the number 2K voice. And you can go into our chat and ask questions and comment. We'd love to have you there. So tell us about your retreat. Tell us about your coaching.
Okay. I'll go in that order. The retreats are available to individuals and groups. I try about once a year to schedule one here in Costa Rica that just any one person can sign up for. And essentially, there's a beginner surf lesson if you don't know how to surf, and most people have never surfed before, in the morning. And then we do some creativity building exercise. I spent 17 years as an art instructor, so I love helping people work on creative vision for their lives. And as a matter of fact, the three things that have taken up my time as an adult, photography, teaching, and coaching, even before I called it that, all have to do with some version of saying to people, let's look at the patterns. Let's look at how amazing everything could be, or maybe already is. So the retreats involve some amount of that. Whatever comes up in the water, we spend some time talking about. I was an English major as an undergrad. I love literature and poetry. And so I usually give people some very short excerpts from poems or literature just to get them thinking. And there's lots of quiet reflection time built into every day. And there are yoga classes and time to explore the local environment. The sunsets are magical, so we don't miss a sunset. And people have an opportunity to do some individual coaching if they like as well. So it's a way to, so it's a little bit more intentional than a vacation, and vacations are crucial. But it's not just about rest. It's about maybe leaving with some learning, some lessons, some metaphors, some ideas about how you can take whatever it is that happened on retreat back and apply it to the life that you have taken a break from. And those, I work also with groups. If there's a group of 3 or 6 or 10 or 12, I don't know if I'd want to go much bigger than 12, maybe a little bit. I can do a custom retreat. We can do it in North Carolina. It certainly doesn't have to be in Costa Rica or wherever people happen to be. We can find the closest really good surf school. I don't teach the surf lessons myself. I think that's an art that really requires some dedication. And it's better if you have one surf instructor for at least every 3 people, so that you have an instructor close and they're there to answer your questions and very helpfully push you into waves when you're still getting your strength. So those are the retreats, and they're great for team building and culture building, culture changing, for families or organizations. And then the coaching is, my background is as an artist. So I'm naturally rebellious against confining myself to a single technique. I really do think that most people come to coaching or to any sort of intentional moment of guidance with almost all they need. And all they really require is some revision, literally re-seeing what they have access to, either in their own life or just beyond where they've reached in the past. And so I'll use whatever that person brings and my own capacity for creative vision in collaboration, usually over a 3 to 12 month period, to help them generate some kind of change. If they're stuck in a job they're not happy with, it may involve, falling back in love with that job, or it may involve changing careers.
And you
Or
utilize the notion of the water in all of this, the ideas that are there.
I love water metaphors, but I don't have to. I mean, that's, water is my teacher. And like one of my dearest friends in the world has very gamely tried surfing several times, and she loves being in the water. She just doesn't like that board. Just doesn't want that board out there with her. What she loves is riding horses, and for her, that's a way to access something more powerful and be in collaboration with a natural force. And I'm petrified of horses. I mean, I have tried, but oh my God, no,
Well,
thank
for
you.
her,
So
and I'm guessing just listening to you, uh, she loves her horses more now that you know she doesn't love the water.
she
You
might.
know
Well,
what
she
I
does love
mean?
the water, just not surfing.
Right,
But if she came
right,
to me for coaching, we would probably spend a lot of time talking about horses and not
right,
as much time talking
right,
about
right,
water.
right, right. It's not about you when it comes
It's
to
not
that.
about me,
Right, right,
exactly.
right. I mean, I'm a coach. It's not about
Right.
that. It's about, but you got to keep doing some, expanding, growing, all of those things. Let me ask them, have you ever gotten hurt on the board?
Hurt? Oh yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah.
And you keep
Yeah. I
getting
mean,
back up.
yeah. I mean, well, it depends on which way you've gotten hurt. I mean,
Mhm.
you got to figure you're falling. I mean, you're falling probably, dozens of times a day next to a hard thing. Sooner or later, you're going to land on that hard thing. So yeah, I broke just tiny fracture on this little bone in my hand. The board just ran into it, and I cut the back of my foot one time on the fin. And I've gotten plenty of little bruises and stuff. But I've been surfing for now it's almost 13 years. And I think any action sport, I was a competitive cyclist, and I hurt myself much worse riding my bike
Right.
than I ever have surfing. I mean, I got hit by a car one time. I wasn't doing anything wrong, and somebody just ran. I mean, it's the chances of something that terrible happening to me surfing are pretty low. Whereas, we all get out on those roads all the time. We don't think about it. But yeah, it can happen for sure.
So, is there some place you haven't been that you want to visit, or is there something on your bucket list that you
Nope, I
know
think we've got
of?
somebody knocking at the door.
Oh, do you have to get
Oh,
it?
I don't know. I'm borrowing. Do you think I have to get it?
I don't know. Let's see what happens if they knock again.
Okay, we'll see if they knock again.
Is there something on your
Uh,
bucket list or a place you wanna go to that, has been inspired by the water?
Uh, Geez, I really love going back to places I've already been. I really am.
Why is that? Why is that?
Well, I'm a real people person, and I
Okay.
love to share places with people I love. And I love getting to know a place really well, and figuring out all the hidden nooks and crannies. And part of that, I think, is what drove me to be a photographer. I mean, I'm interested in the photograph you're not going to see the first 1,000 times you go to a place,
But
not
you
the one that
so can you
everybody.
see it the first time, second time? Is that I mean, you able to because you're a photographer and I love photography, are you able to see things that somebody without a photographer's eye is going to miss?
No, I'm sure. I mean,
Uh-huh.
it's like anything else. Once you get used to doing something, you get easily bored doing that thing, and so
Right,
you push yourself to the next level.
right.
And yeah, so it's not a question of am I able to see. It's just that I don't stop looking until I've seen it.
Ah, and when do you
Yeah.
know you've seen it?
No, it's just like falling in love.
Oh, gotcha.
And I always said that to my students, that don't push that button until you think you are in love. And it's like, yeah, go ahead.
No, because 'cause I'm going through something right now, which is so interesting and apropos to what you're talking about. So I'm writing a series of books, and the
Yes.
series is called In Just One Afternoon. The premise being anything is possible, and, rocket ships go off in an afternoon, babies are born, magic happens, we can get up on that board one time. I mean, anything is possible. And so the first one was In Just One Afternoon, Listening to the Hearts of Men. That book was my first one, and I struggled because I don't
Mhm.
see myself as a writer, and I interviewed like 20 some odd men, and I struggled. It took me a year to get the book done. The next one was In Just One Afternoon, listening into the hearts of twins. And that book, I interviewed way too many twins, but they were so fascinating, I couldn't help it. And that book was 400 pages. My next one is Millennials, In Just One Afternoon, listening to the hearts of millennials. And I have been struggling chopping down the stories. And I've worked on them over and over and over again. And I've to the point now where I've started to go through, and I'm making the books much smaller, 10 stories to see what they are, right? Because I want to get it published the end of February, beginning of March, whatever. I am amazed at how good they are when I
Mm.
really didn't think they were good at all. But each one it's like you sculpt something and you don't see the figure right away. And then all of a sudden it appears. And 10 stories, like I've noticed from Friday when I started going through them really passionately, they have the form has taken place. And it's almost, in some regard, it's almost freaked me out.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Because all of a sudden I was dreading it. How is it going to go together? And
Yes.
all of a sudden, there it is.
Yes, that's such a beautiful story. And sculpture is a powerful metaphor. And an old one, there was a Greek philosopher named Plotinus,
Mhm.
who talked about the way a sculptor works, in terms of understanding how you shape your own character. And I think that really is true. And especially in our culture, it's frequently a subtractive process. We're often dealing with too much, as opposed to not enough.
Right.
And there's a certain amount of, and oh boy, do we struggle with this, but anytime you're engaged in any creative project, you have got to just give into the mystery.
Yes.
You've got to surrender, to use your word, for a good long while, and just be with the material and let it, just trust it, commit to it, internalize it, engage with it passionately, as you say. And Elizabeth Gilbert, in her book Big Magic, talks about genius, right? And the original Roman idea about genius was not that any individual was a genius, but that you had a genius. It was this spirit that would visit you if you were dedicated enough and passionate enough. And I think that's true for almost any endeavor.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that book, by the way, for those of you listening, is fabulous.
It
It
is.
is
It's wonderful.
it is a fabulous book. So I highly recommend it. And I
Yes.
love what you just said because the one of the ultimate form of play is creativity. I mean, to play with your creativity. And it is
Yes.
such a spiritual connection. I mean, it is a spiritual connection beyond
Yes.
anything,
It is.
right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, the Greeks had two words for time. They had the word chronos, Chronos, which is what we think of as time. It can be divided up into seconds, minutes, hours, days, years, and it's something that can be wasted
Yeah.
or well spent, as it were, like money. It's a quantitative thing. And then they had another word, kairos, Kairos, which was deep time, eternal time. And it's when you are playful, whether you're inventing something, or surfing, or writing something, when you are engaged in these states of profound play, or flow is a very common word for these states, when you're really absorbed and challenged but not too challenged, you really are engaging with this kind of deep time. You've tapped into something that's eternal and universal and a little bit relevant to all of us, like falling in love. I mean,
Yes.
these primal human experiences that draw us all together. And so, I'm not surprised that these millennials have come out with, stories that are fundamental, that matter, and that you spending enough time with them allowed you to see exactly what you had to do in the craft way to allow those voices to say what they were trying to say.
Everything you have just said has been my experience.
So good.
Absolutely. And so I ditto this for everyone. And if you have not listened to this, go back and in other words, if you have, you're here. Share the show, but go back and listen to it again. because it's monumental to realize that I sat there and all of a sudden these forms took place, and it's exactly what Maya said. Exactly. You let the process happen. Just you let it happen on the board, you get out of your head, you let it happen. Or if you're in your head, it's part of the process,
Right.
right? So you let it happen, and then all of a sudden, it's like, the lesson I just got from this book will go with me into eternity
So beautiful.
with
Yeah.
writing these books. Yeah, because the proof I just got this proof, and I'm like walking on my toes. Walking on my toes.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Writing is, I mean, I do some writing myself, and it's easily the hardest work
uh,
that I can imagine. It's so demanding. And that, producing things that are terrible, just, and keep reworking them until they're, non-terrible and then good even,
yes.
it's laborious, and it takes as long as it takes. There
Woo,
is no prediction.
honey, you just spoke my world.
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
God. And for a non-writer, you
It
know?
really, I mean, and for writers too, writers just know that. I mean, they just know that it's horrifying. And yeah, I mean, Annie Dillard told a story in a book that she wrote about writing, about this guy who he was a professional writer, and the only way he could write new sentences was that he would start literally at the beginning of the book and copy it on his typewriter, and he would get to the end of what he had already wrote and accidentally write a few original lines, and then freak out and have to run away, and then he'd have to do the whole thing again tomorrow.
Yeah, and I always thought, and I thought when I started my process that interviewing people would be easier because I'd have their story and I could just chop it down. I'm not so sure it's the easiest way. Sometimes I
Yeah.
think writing from scratch can almost be easier, but this is the process that has chosen me. I
Right.
guess I
Well, and
should
it is that
say,
way, isn't it?
yes, it
Yeah.
has chosen me.
No, it really. I mean, I have a podcast, and I feel a tremendous, and I edit the conversations, and I feel a tremendous amount of responsibility with other people's voices. And
Yeah,
I think when you are engaged in that kind of work, it can be more difficult.
it is definitely because you got it.
Yeah.
Obviously, I've been with them, so I want to keep in mind the energy that I had when I spoke with them, and hopefully that comes through. Um,
Yeah.
I just want to remind everyone also that tomorrow, just so you know, for many of you that have watched our show before and watched the channel, we have a special health in show tomorrow that my friend Debbie, um, it was my friend Debbie's show, and she's a homeopath. And tomorrow we have a special. She passed away in May, and we're doing another health in show, and it's going to be about chronic pain and homeopathy from 10 to 11. We have a special guest. We have lots of people coming on to chat and talk and share, and it will be a wonderful show right here from 10 to 11. So please come back. Eastern time. I don't want you to forget. Okay, so you have my book up. Okay, so here are the two that I have now. In Just One Afternoon, Listening to the Hearts of Men, and In Just One Afternoon, Listening to the Hearts of Twins. And soon they will have their sister brother, In Just One Afternoon, Listening to the Hearts of Millennials, and we will go from there. So thank you, Amnon. They're on Amazon and both print and ebooks. So I want, if I want to ask you, if you ever come up to Raleigh
All the time.
all the time, I
Yeah.
would love to if you're willing, I would love to schedule a power lunch
No, absolutely.
for you to speak to a networking organization that I found.
Yes, one of
Of
one of the things that I miss most about teaching is hamming it up in front of an audience. So
so I'm
yeah.
go- so we're going to do that. I'm going to have Chris reach out to you, or and we'll get that for when you come back.
Okay, good.
I think
Great.
this
I'd be
information,
honored.
yes, this information is fabulous. And I love for people to hear more, from your perspective and about the water and, in general, because, it's very interesting. So once again, if you have any questions, this is the time to call us, 919-518-9773, or you can come in on Skype at computers, that's plural, the number 2K voice. And you can join us on our chats. Not too late. Love to hear your comments, questions, ideas. And if any of you have ever been in the water on a board or anything, what sport, what activity are you involved with that has taught you so much and has engaged you so much that you are a different person today? Love to hear from that, because for me, it's water, it's yoga. I mean, yesterday I did yoga and I left and I got done and I'm like, this body just did, I'm so and I get out and I've been in so much pain, or I'm getting older. I just celebrated my 65th birthday. I mean, I'm amazed when you practice something for not, and I'm not doing it for years. I mean, 3 years I'm on a mat, and not every day. That even a little bit, another second or two of holding my balance thrilled me yesterday. Thrilled me beyond what I can imagine. So, anything we do that way is so freeing. I see you shaking your head,
Yeah,
right?
just yesterday, I talked to a woman who was from Maryland, and she had been down here. She came down for a week just on vacation, and I try to talk to people. I just love talking to people and getting their stories. And it was the first time she'd ever been on a surfboard. She's roughly, I would say, mid 50s, maybe around 50 to mid 50s. And I said, what did you learn? And she said, I always thought this was something that I could never do. I didn't think about it very much, but I had this assumption this was something that I could never do. And I came here and I did it, and now I feel like I can do anything. And obviously we all have limits. I mean, I'm not going to be a
Absolutely.
power forward for the NBA,
Right.
but that's not what she meant. I mean, she really was taking stock of what other artificial limitations have I placed on myself, by making assumptions about the nature of endeavors or activities that don't belong there. Those limitations don't belong there. And she may never get on a surfboard again, but that's not the point. The point is that powerful lesson that she gets to take back home and apply to everything she does.
Absolutely. Yesterday, it wasn't, and here's the thing when you do these things, or here's the thing that I want to share with you, what you can do, and I'm sure Maya would say the same thing. It wasn't that I couldn't keep my balance yesterday and I fell on both legs. It was that my right leg was stronger. It You find the thing that you do better, then it's all bad. Do you know what I mean? If you stay up a little longer, if you tilt it a little bit better, whatever it is, you find the positive. Not that, oh, I fell and I can't do it. It was one leg was stronger than the other. That's okay. That's like moving mountains to me,
Hmm.
right? So it's really about that. And whether you call us today or not, just reflect on your life and see for yourself, what is it that is teaching you, and what have you learned, and what have you tried and not failed. It's not about failing. It's about, what have you tried? What did you get and
Absolutely.
what you have fun with, right?
Well, I would say this. I think revising your attitude towards failure is one of the things that
Mhm.
surfing has been really good for me in doing. And as a creative person, that an artist, artists fail. That's what we have to do. You don't get anywhere original without lots and lots of failure. And to have this sort of ritualized, absolutely, no stakes failure built into my life that is attached to so much deep joy, just that juxtaposition has
Yes.
been liberating in ways that can continue to grow and strengthen as I get a little bit older and can look into the future and can see that I will fail in ways that I have previously not failed. I mean, we're all mortal. We all ultimately stop, and it's really been good in that sense, is to make a lot of mistakes and to realize that these things that we call failures they're just part of the spectrum of experience. They're just another wavelength in that spectrum,
They're
and they
just
have probably
lessons.
more to teach us.
Yeah, they're just
Yeah,
lessons. They're not, they just
exactly.
take us to something else. I mean, I don't even know what failure is. I mean, seriously, I don't know what failure is.
The sooner something doesn't work, the sooner you get to figure out how to make it better.
That's it. It's just a
Yeah.
lesson. I mean, it's just a lesson. It's something to be aware of, to listen to process, to engage with, to try, do it again, try it again. It's just not, I don't even know what failure is, really. So anyway, final words.
Final words.
Final
I think
words.
Yeah, there's nothing more serious than making sure that you have sustainable play practice.
Yep, and go find it.
Yes.
Go find it. So
Yes, and play with loved ones, especially. So important.
absolutely. Absolutely. It's a great way to stay together and
Mhm.
know what you're really focusing on. And it's a great way to communicate.
Yes.
So it has been an absolute joy and a delight to have you here.
Thank you. It's been an honor. I've loved every minute of it.
Thank you so much. And I look forward to inviting you to come and speak at a luncheon too. 'Cause I
Great.
think
Thank you
that
so much.
my pleasure. And for
All
everyone out
right.
there, it's been great having you too. And we look
Okay.
forward to you being here next week and sharing another show with us, another way of breaking free. And I look forward to seeing you. Maya, are you going surfing this afternoon?
If the waves are decent, I'm going.
All right. We'll be thinking of you and you think of us
Thank
on that
you.
board, okay?
Okay.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. If you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section at nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by Telestream's Wirecast software, StreamingGear.com, Carolina Apparel, and DeltaForce.net.